So this is our June meeting for the NBEAA, and this is the first time that we've met fully online in quite a while. We're working out a couple of promising options for meeting in person, back at Sonoma Clean Power possibly, or at the Sebastopol Grange. So please stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see each other face to face soon. We've got a nice meeting today set up with a lot of new updates. Things have been really dynamic, just even in the last week or two. We won't worry about COVID because we're on Zoom. We've managed that for this month. So our agenda today is that my name is Sonia Carey. I'm the president emeritus for the NBEAA. That means that I was last year's president, and we're trying to split time so that you're not hearing too much of any one voice. And I will do the first part of the meeting with the chapter business, the events and offers, and the news. And then Cecilia has put together a presentation for us. Cecilia, do you want to mention the sneak preview on it?
Yeah, so the name of the presentation is The Incomplete History of Electric Vehicle Charging, mostly in the United States. And I had a lot of fun putting it together, so I hope y'all like it.
That's great. I'm working on two screens, so I'm just gonna make sure I see everyone so that we can do intros. Yay. All right, so introductions. Who are you and how do you get around? We've got a smaller group. It's summertime, we're online. So just take a minute or two. A minute or less is what we've said. Shall we start with Russ?
I'm Russ Wigglesworth. I live in Petaluma, and I have a 2015 Kia Soul EV. And I'm waiting for the Aptera to come through.
Me too. I think that would be exciting. John Pomerly? Oh, you're still on mute.
Yeah.
You are.
There we go. So, yeah, I live in Santa Rosa. We have my family, Ellen and I converted a 85 Toyota pickup to electric a long time ago, in 2011, and it's still going around with a leaf motor. So that's an exciting thing. That's my main mode of transportation. So that's it.
Thank you. Linda Robinette?
Yeah, I have a 2022 Chevrolet EV Bolt, and I'm so sorry to hear that they're discontinuing the line. It's a lovely little car. And I live in Sebastopol. I don't go very many places. I could have probably got a less range EV.
Do you have a couple of times when you go a little further, like a couple times a year?
We've gone to Oakland and stuff, but generally we didn't need to charge until I got back home.
Right.
Because it has over 200 miles of range. So if you go to San Francisco and don't drive around very much, you'll get back home.
Yeah. Mike Newell.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Mike Newell, I live in Santa Rosa. Still driving my 2011 Leaf. I had a scare back a couple months back because it wasn't booting, but just replaced the 12-volt battery again and getting a few more months out of it. So I missed last month's meeting because I was in New Jersey, where my daughter's been going to college. She graduated, but my report for that here is we've owned a condo back there for 6 years now, and this is the first year that there's been EVs spotted on the condo complex. There's no charging in the condo complex, but I saw 4 or 5 EVs, of course, a couple of Teslas, but I had an Ioniq and just another plug-in. But things are moving pretty fast back there, from like EVs were scarce to seeing more and more. So of course, nothing compared to around here, but it was a bright spot in seeing some more adoption back where there isn't a lot of EV charging.
That's great.
That's
I
it.
think New Jersey has some pretty good state incentives too.
They do, yeah. That's
Ellen?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ellen. I'm in Santa Rosa and I drive a 2017 Chevy Bolt that I love. And at the end of this month, my mom, dad, brother, and I were all gonna hop in the Bolt and head up to Oregon for a little rafting trip, which should be really fun. So we're looking forward to that and getting to take the Bolts for a long trip. Will be fun.
So do you have your charging planned out? That's how some people do these long road trips, is they identify where the chargers are and have them planned out. Have you done that?
Yeah, we have several options we're looking at, kind of deciding where we want to do it, but we're getting excited to, I think we're going to charge at the what's that bridge called, Dad? The Sundial Bridge. The chargers there, and then another place in Oregon. So yeah, that's kind of for my dad and I, that's kind of the most fun part actually, is planning the charging. So
Yeah, take pictures at the charging places. I'm kind
Yeah.
of excited about this idea that charging spots are pretty naturalized, people
Yeah.
that go off the pavement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll take some
They're
pictures.
wanting to close gas stations like in Sebastopol. I can't see why gas stations couldn't put a couple of chargers up and also make a little bit of money.
Absolutely, I've seen that. Yeah. Cecilia, you're in the middle of my screen, so
All right, I'm Cecilia Sullivan, president of the NBEAA, and I drive a 2018 Model 3, and yesterday I actually got to use my feet for a little bit of transportation.
all right.
Like walking around, not like, moving my car.
Brad?
Okay, yeah, I'm Brad Morrison. I live in Santa Rosa. I am not sure if you guys can see me or hear me because I can't see anyone, but that's good that it's at least working one way. I may have to leave the meeting and come back to reset it or something. So yeah, I drive a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid with 185,000 miles or plus or minus. Yeah, I use my feet and bike every so often too. The EV highlight of my last month was when I got passed by a 1985 red Toyota conversion truck on Steel Lane on my way to work. And, I tried with all of my 93 horsepower that my 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid has to catch up with him, but I couldn't. So.
He has it tuned, I have a feeling. Zeno?
Yeah, hi, I'm Zeno Schweiting in Sebastopol. I drive a hybrid, Honda Insight. I haven't been driving a lot. I was in Ho Chi Minh City in the last month, so visiting my son there. I think there are maybe over 2 million scooters in town. I haven't seen any electric vehicles there when I was there. I did get COVID in Ho Chi Minh City, so I may have missed some of the action, which was kind of ironic because I had been avoiding COVID for years and living very carefully here in town. And so now I'm kind of fatigued because of probably because of COVID, and I'll probably take a low profile today. Thanks.
And sorry for mispronouncing your name. I'm trying to retrain myself, Zeno. I hope you feel better soon. Lawrence?
Excuse me, I'm trying to get breakfast down. As you can see, I'm in Palo Alto. I drive my girlfriend's 2019 Volt. A couple times a year, I do all the driving to LA and back, and then the rest of the year just around town a little bit. I'm also getting around on an electric boost recumbent bicycle. with the Bionics equipment. Just replaced the battery and the console on that recently. And I'm a big fan of using electric vehicles to with vehicle to grid to prevent major grid upgrades and get rid of fossil fuels as we electrify our homes.
I'd love to see a picture of your recumbent bike at some point, Lawrence. I don't know if it has a fairing, if you're flying.
It does have a fairing. It's the base bike was held the land speed record in the 80s for human powered transport. It's an Easy Racer Gold Rush, and then that was a steel bike, and this one is aluminum, so it's a Gold Rush replica. And the previous owner dropped in the Bionics rear wheel and the rest of the kit. Yeah, I'll see if I can dig up a bike or take a picture and share it sometime.
That's cool. Celeste, I see you're on screen here. Would you like to introduce yourself? Celeste, we'll wait and see if you come online. Tor, would you like to say hi?
Hey, good morning. Let's see, what am I driving? A Chevy Bolt and a lot of bicycling around town. But yeah, we were driving the Bolt to Portland and back 5 years ago. And I would just say that despite the non-Tesla supercharger network being kind of messy, it has evolved and there's a lot more options. When we first started out, the fastest fast charger was a 20 kilowatt one, which took 2 hours. But you know, so it's gotten better. And you know, like Ellen and John said, is the strategizing of where to charge I find that kind of fun. So enjoy your trip.
Great. That's everyone, unless someone has not introduced themselves and they're on Zoom as Celeste or someone else. Okay. I guess we're covered. So chapter business. Just a quick recap on, you know, the NBEAA. We're a chapter of the Electric Vehicle Association. You can check out myeva.org for the national news on a regular basis. They publish a blog there and are, you know, busy with different initiatives during the course of the year. The EVA's mission is to educate and advocate for the rapid adoption of electric vehicles, and so far, pretty good. The website that we keep up is at NBEAA.org. And I think we're all like really wishing that we had little cards to hand out or something, because NBEAA.org has some really great links, a lot of good summary of rebates and things. So if you have friends or family that need information, it's a good jumping off point to just check out the resources tab and the links there. We also maintain a couple of different Google groups to communicate with you. The NBEAA Club emails are sent out about 3 times a month just to let you know about the monthly meetings. And then there's a Facebook group as well that you can basically send messages into and participate there on Facebook. Anything else from Ellen or Cecilia on that? Good for now. Also, we wrap up our Zoom meetings into a video and post it on YouTube each month. We've got lots of different videos on YouTube. We try to make a note of what we covered during those meetings, and you can speed through some of the sections and get some fun info. And we PDF our meeting slide presentations so that you can have active links to everything that we've discussed during the meeting. And everything is on nbeaa.org, even the YouTubes, they're all just posted to nbeaa.org. So you can get them there. In addition to the Google groups that I already mentioned, we've got a few here for communications, and don't forget you can send any interesting news tidbits to NBEAA team and we'll try to cover it in the slides. Or if someone wants to reach out to the officers, we've got NBEAA officers, and I'll leave it at that for now. I just mentioned that. Okay. All right.
Right, I can speak to this. Last month we mentioned that we were going to do this little hat raffle. If you wrote an article and sent it in to us, we haven't gotten any entries, so this is still going. We're going to try again for next month. You can send in your articles by July 1st. If you have questions, you can reach out to me if you're not sure what you want to write about or what would be a good subject.
I've been thinking about a couple of subjects, and I've also been thinking about how short articles can be just really powerful, like 300 words, something that needs to get out to people. I feel like there's an opportunity to put a little personal face on owning an EV, the joy of sitting at a charging station and watching birds, or helping a family member convert to electric. In addition to all the informational stuff that we tend to do, we do a lot of like, hey, this is what you need to know about this area or that area. So my plug would be maybe I'll get a hat and write something really short, or you can beat me to it and write something super short too.
Yeah, I had a question about the article. Where is it going to be posted? Is it going to go onto the website or?
Yes, it'd be on the website.
Okay.
Great.
So this is a slide I put together. You may already know about this, but I just wanted to put it out there in case anyone was interested. On the weekend of June 24th and 25th, there will be what's called the San Francisco Electrify Expo. It'll be held, it's actually not in San Francisco, it's going to be at the Alameda Point in Alameda. It's supposedly this huge 1 million square feet of festival space. Sounds kind of amazing. It'll be $20 for each day, except kids 5 and under are free, which is cool. There's opportunities to test drive EVs, like both cars and trucks. You can try out e-bikes, e-scooters, e-motorcycles, e-skateboards, and hoverboards. And I also didn't realize that they're going to have a high-speed e-bike course for bikes that can go over 25 miles an hour, which I thought sounded kind of fun. And then also an e-mountain bike dirt course, which looked kind of cool too. I'm curious what that would be like. But yeah, and I think they're also going to have stuff like different exhibits, like a customized EV exhibit for conversions, and music and food. Sounds very like family friendly. Unfortunately, I'm going to be in Oregon that weekend, so I won't be able to make it. But if anyone does go, I think it would be fun if you were willing to share it maybe at the next meeting or something. I'd love to hear what it's like. So just want to put that out there.
I wonder if you can get there via ferry also, because I'm not sure if Alameda Point is the ferry.
I think it is actually, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Sounds like a fun day. Yeah.
I know. Has anyone been in the past to one of these? Maybe not.
I haven't, but I've been over to Alameda Point. Like it's that was it former Navy station stuff? It's like a lot of paved space.
Yeah.
Airfield. Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks for putting it together.
It was the U.S. Navy rework facility. I actually knew a sailor who worked there. I guess they wrecked it years ago.
Yeah. So SB 233. Shall I just speak to this? We've got a couple of different bills that we had kind of signed on to support of, and we thought it would be interesting to kind of follow them through legislation and gain some understanding of what's going on. This bill, SB 233, is the one about divesting from fossil fuels in the CalPERS and CalSTRS pension funds that are managed by the state of California. And they represent something like $77 billion.
I think you're speaking of the other bill.
Oh, that's 252. So sorry, I'm going to back up. I'm going to say SB 233 is about bidirectional charging. It's bidirectional charging standards. Sorry, guys. This one is following a similar pattern, and it passed the Senate 29-9. You can look up who voted which way, but I think our local representation did vote yes on this one, and it's going into the assembly at this point. And it would require bidirectional EV charging in electric vehicles by 2030. So
Exciting. I'm excited that it passed the Senate.
yeah, it's good. And then I guess you guys can all guess what 252 is. This would be the fossil fuel industry investments one, and it also passed the Senate. It was interesting, I thought, that Mike McGuire voted yes and Bill Dodd voted no. He had concerns. And then also it does need to go through a committee in the assembly and then go to the assembly. So it does have a couple of hurdles. Lawrence, you had a question?
Yeah, so with the one about bidirectional charging, there are a number of EVs that already incorporate it, but we don't have any home bidirectional chargers on the market yet. So is there any requirement that chargers be bidirectional?
Yes, I think it addresses that, but there was a comment in the last month that I don't know if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was this comment that the cars didn't necessarily have to have the switches if they're going to require it in the chargers themselves, or there was some aspect of this that was like some kind of moot point aspect where they tried to streamline the requirements, but they are trying to make it so that the EVSEs themselves sold in California must accommodate.
Okay, because it's trivial. It's a software change to get CCS cars to be bidirectional via the DC ports. That's extremely trivial. The hardware's all there. It's just a matter of not opening the contactors when current is flowing out rather than in during DC charging. So that's trivial, but it is a software patch. And besides Volvo, I haven't heard of anybody who is saying that they are enabling their cars to work with the SAE CCS bidirectional charging standard. And Volvo said they'll put out software patches for their older cars in order to allow it. So kudos to Volvo, but everyone else has got to get on board. And then, of course, the other thing is we had 4 bidirectional home chargers between like 7 and 10 kilowatts promised for the first quarter of this year. And as far as I can tell, none of them are on the market yet. And there's a difference between like what Renault has done and Ford has done with the proprietary vehicle to grid or even vehicle to load, and the CCS, which would allow any CCS, the CCS standard, which would allow any CCS car that has that software patch.
I think Cecilia has some updated info on it.
Great.
Yeah, so the bill did require bidirectional support in the EVSEs, but I believe that's been removed last I heard.
Okay. Was there, I thought that at the time that they removed that from the EVSE portion of it, that there was some kind of a, maybe they were just saying that not every unit sold needs to have bidirectional support. You would have that choice. But to your point, Lawrence, somebody's got to put that out on the market. Okay. Related somewhat, Ford announces Tesla charging in NACS use. Did you want to speak to this one, Cecilia?
Sure. Yeah. So this was like a surprise. Ford and Elon Musk were on a Twitter space, I believe. I think all these announcements happening via Twitter spaces, or they talk about it. But Ford will be in the spring. They'll be able to, the Ford vehicles will be able to plug into the Tesla supercharging network, and they'll use an adapter for that. Eligible vehicles will be the Mustang Mach-E, the F-150 Lightning, and the E-Transit. So I think if you have like some of those older electric vehicles, they will not be supported for obvious reasons.
Okay.
I believe the supercharger access will be for V3 superchargers, since it's not going to be for all the superchargers in the United States, and those V3 superchargers do seem to be ones that are able to speak CCS. There will be software integration for activation and payment via Ford Pass and the Ford Pro Intelligence, so their software. In 2025, next generation Ford vehicles will actually have the North American Charging Standard NACS or Tesla connector built into the vehicles. But Ford is also going to continue to develop its Blue Oval charge network, which will be CCS for the time being that I know of right now. Don't know if they'll be adding NACS connectors to that.
So did you create a GM slide, or should we just,
I did create a GM slide.
is it the next one?
It is the next one.
Okay, well,
All right, GM, like a few days later, did the exact same thing in 2024. It's not exactly the same, but in 2024, the GM vehicles will also be able to connect to Tesla superchargers. GM will also integrate the Tesla supercharging network into the vehicles and the apps. Again, be V3 superchargers presumably, since it's going to be like, it seems like the same kind of deal. And then in 2025, GM vehicles will also adopt the NACS connector. This is shocking. It's like, it feels like the world is broken, because it seemed like CCS was going to be like the way it was, but it seems to be changing. Anyway, yeah, so oh goodness, this doesn't make sense. GM will CCS to NACS adapters. Okay, so they will create NACS adapters for their CCS. Oh wait, sorry. They'll create CCS adapters for these NACS vehicles, so that they will be able to do like the same thing that Tesla vehicles do to people to access CCS charging stations. And their charging network is not going to go away. It's still going to be there. And also, I said that GM vehicles will have parity with Tesla vehicles, so there's not going to be any kind of prioritization.
I have a question about this. Is this I have a car already. So I
Yep.
won't buy a car for quite a long time. I usually keep a car about 10 years. Will this be backwards compatible with my car with an adapter?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, let's take Ellen and Linda's Chevy Bolts and walk through how this is going to affect them.
Yeah, it's 2022, and I think someone had a 2019 Chevy Bolt. I think someone,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone online has a Mustang, so we'll just pick the Chevy Bolt as an example.
I would
Right
rather
now,
have a Mustang.
yeah, right now, you have a CCS compatible fast charger on your car, and Tesla is going to have all of their V3 chargers. So not every single charging spot that you drive into that is branded Tesla can handle your CCS charger, but every V3 version, which I understand there are 12,000 of them in the US right now. And as they add them, they will always be adding V3 going forward. And so that's a very dynamic network. So if you have a Ford Mustang Mach-E that's this year's or last year's, or you have a 2019 Bolt, you're going to be able to drive into those Tesla V3 chargers, and they will provide you with the adapter, and your car will get recognized, and you can plug in. And also, I think they're working out how you will pay in a very simplified way, because the Ford press release said that people would be able to just use their Ford account to pay at Tesla. So I assume, I didn't read the exact same words for GM, but I assume it would be the same thing. If you've got a GM account for your car, you put your credit card in that account, you probably in 2024 be able to drive up to any one of those 12,000 V3 chargers, plug in, and automatically it'll recognize the ID of your car. You won't be doing anything but getting power if you have a credit card on file at your account, that sort of thing. So that's 2024.
Yeah, so for that part, I'm like thinking about like specific vehicles. I'm not sure exactly how it'll work for every vehicle, but it would require a software update in order to support that kind of integration. But otherwise, a CCS otherwise an adapter. I mean, you would be able to use. There are these magic docks on the superchargers that do allow you to charge. So if you're not able to get that kind of integration, I would hope that you would be able to use the like Tesla's app to be able to use the network at that point once those adapters are available at the least.
Yeah, so my assumption is you're not going to be carrying an adapter around with you in your car. The adapter is going to be built into the station, and you'll just plug into CCS that way. But then the other use case that we could walk through is what is a Chevy Equinox going to look like in 2025? What is a Mustang Mach-E going to look like in 2025? The 2025 year models, those will have Tesla plugs in them. And so what Cecilia was saying is that they will have North American charging standard plugs. So this little oval plug is now called the North American charging standard plug. And that plug will be available, on those 2025 year model Fords and GMs. And the assumption is that because there are many Electrify America chargers out there with CCS, that you would need an adapter that goes from NACS or NACS. NACS is the new acronym pronunciation, Cecilia?
That's what I've heard.
Okay, NACS. NACS is easy to say. And so it'll go from NACS to CCS.
I just checked the supercharger map, the Tesla supercharger, the equivalent ones, and there are none in Santa Rosa.
No V3s, maybe? Did you filter to V3? You just went to mute.
Okay. The map was supposed to show that, and once I got out of San Francisco, it started me in San Francisco. Once I got out of San Francisco, they all disappeared.
Well, we'll have to check, but there are lots of Tesla superchargers around here. I just don't know if they're V3 or not.
That's it. I mean, I don't know. Can you? I know there's a bunch at Connington Plaza, and I don't know if looking at them you can tell what they are. I'll probably say V3 on them.
I imagine there's a filter to V3, or you can set that filter in your car, to look for them.
Yeah, I do want to reiterate that in the Ford press or the Ford information I saw that they were saying that they would be supplying vehicles with adapters. I assume that they might be doing that for GM as well. But as far as filtering for V3, I know that there are ones that are compatible now. There are only a few that have that magic dock. But for additional CCS support, there will need to be either more magic dock installations or adapters that are going to be supplied to people.
Yeah, so it's very early days. My understanding is that in Scotts Valley near Santa Cruz, there are a few Tesla superchargers that are already fitted with the magic dock, and that magic dock again is a CCS. And so what that means is right now, there are these handful of superchargers that they've just started to add magic docks to that you could plug in your Chevy Bolt to today. So if you're in Scotts Valley, you could test that out. And
In
I
fact,
think
I've
we're all
never
just,
even heard the term Scotts Valley, means that I probably have a small chance of visiting there. I don't even know where it is.
it's near Santa Cruz. So you
Oh,
could get
that's why.
there. theoretically, you could get there and you could test this out. And so in theory, you could go drive your Bolt there and plug in at a Tesla location, and you'd be experiencing the very early stages of this rollout. So, yeah, so just to get people feeling like what the real world might be in 2024, I imagine we're going to have some kind of sense of exactly how many Tesla spots an older Bolt could plug into. Yeah.
Well, and since the international companies haven't decided to switch to Tesla, I wonder whether it's going to stick.
That's a good question from a Kia owner. Yeah.
The brand new Kia owner with the 350 volt charger. By the way, Scotts Valley, if you go up Highway 17 and down towards Santa Cruz, about 5 miles from Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley's right there.
Rolling down the hill there. John, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, has anyone seen the Magic Dock? I mean, I visualize that what needs to happen is a cord that actually plugs into your car. What is this thing that's on the Tesla?
I've seen a picture of it. So the Tesla cord kind of loops down and back up inside the box of the Tesla station. And what it looks like is this massive boot at the end of the cord. And so there's some way to either unhook the cable with or without the dock attached. And so like if you drive up in a Tesla, you just unhook the same cable and put the smaller portion in. And if you drive up in a Bolt, you unhook the whole thing. And it's just an adapter.
Yeah, you need to use the app to indicate you want to charge, and then it'll lock the adapter onto the cable.
I see. So that keeps it from being stolen or whatever. Yeah. Interesting.
And it's all tucked in. Jerry, you're on mute.
I think Tor's had his hand up for a while too.
Thank you, Ellen.
All right, so I'll just chime in. I think overall it's, GM and Ford are just going, is the CCS network going to develop? Because they're putting a lot of cars out there, and Tesla's building out, they're maintaining their systems. So it just seems like a smart thing. I have been noticing vehicles that have their charge port in the back rear, like Tesla. So, because they'll be easy to pull up to a Tesla supercharger. It'll be interesting to see what the others do, these big trucks and whatnot. But I think probably the first access point is, you need an app that has your car talking to the charger. So, got to figure that out first. Ford Pass has done more on that than GM. But really it's Tesla will probably drive it. And then the adapters, you'll find out later. But yeah, it seems like a good strategy. So just thought I would chime in.
Jerry, did you have a comment? Okay. I think I recall that the Kia EV6 has their plug on the back right, which, given Tesla's penchant for really short cables, doesn't help that much. So something has to give at that point. Also, if they really want to be serious about creating a pickup or allowing for people to pull through with larger vehicles, Tesla's going to have to kind of think that one through too. Lawrence?
Yeah, I wanted to say that Tesla's been pretty late to the party for bidirectional charging with vehicle to grid, but they did announce a short time ago that it's cheaper for them to make charging boards, onboard charging boards that are bidirectional than the ones they're making now. So it's a no-brainer for them. But it's not clear to me whether they'll be pushing DC or AC off the car through the cord. And that has big questions around standardization. The DC being pushed off the cord to the building, and then the charger on the building deciding how to synchronize with the grid and when and all that makes a lot of sense, because it's specific to the local utility, and having the car have to figure all of that out is asking a lot. So we'll see what comes of that. But of course, the NACS plug itself can handle DC bidirectional. But how it'll be implemented is a whole nother question. So at first I wasn't all that favorable, but if it allows bidirectionality, which I think is crucial going forward, then I'm not so dead set against it. But I kind of have questions about what's going to happen going forward, and are other people going to be able to make NACS machines and put them out there, or is that only Tesla's domain? And it seems in some ways a lot of this is a play for Tesla to get the IRA money, and hopefully they'll be more interested in supporting the network for other vehicles than just getting their payment from the government. But we'll see how that plays out.
Well, I thought it was kind of worth spending a little time, since this is a big shift, and maybe we can pull some details together and keep talking about it in the next month. Does everyone feel comfortable moving forward? All right. Let's see.
Okay.
Local news: electric Zamboni at Snoopy Ice Rink. I had no idea.
So I just put this together. I thought it was kind of fun little piece of local news. So I just found out that I think it was about a month ago, the Charles Schultz Ice Rink got an electric Zamboni. And so they've actually had, for I think a couple of decades, they've had a propane powered Zamboni, but they've been doing kind of this major renovation project and decided to make the switch to a lithium ion battery powered one. And I used to skate there as a kid, so it was kind of fun to come across this news.
Guess what, Ellen? So did I.
Oh, you did? That's so cool. I love it. It's a very beloved place, I think, in our community here.
And I think Zambonis are always traditionally propane powered.
Okay.
So
yeah.
They all need conversion. I hadn't thought of it.
I know, totally. And so this is made by a company called Zamboni, believe it or not. And I wasn't able to find too many specs on it, but obviously there's, very little maintenance, which is great. And just, it kind of is a no-brainer in terms of just, less pollution in the air for skaters. Kind of makes sense. A better environment overall, especially for like young kids in an enclosed space, And I was also reading something that I don't fully understand, but it was saying that because there's no longer an engine heating the water being laid over the ice, the water actually stays cooler, which then causes faster freezing and less melting. So I guess so far the skaters have reported noticing that the ice actually feels better with this different Zamboni, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah, and it also, so I guess with this model, it uses less water than their previous Zamboni, and it has fast charging capabilities, which is cool. And it was done in partnership with Sonoma Clean Power, which I think is neat. So if you're ever there, keep your eye out for it and maybe send a picture to our group. I got to get over there and see it.
I went to an ice show years ago, probably about 20 years ago there.
I remember
they used to have those, and I think I ice skated like once in my entire life, so I'd never really been to an ice rink. And so I'd heard about the Zamboni from this comic strips, right? So when it came out, I was kind of surprised how loud and kind of stinky it was. So this electric thing is going to be more like I imagined something, how quiet skating is. I imagined something more like that. So I have a feeling this electric one's going to feel more with the what you expect at an ice rink.
I think so.
Yeah, that was like watching a lawnmower go through it, that kind of noise.
Exactly. Yeah. So down below on the bottom right, you can see on the left the old propane one, and on the right the newer electric one. So I think it's even a little bit wider base, which maybe makes it faster. I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to share that fun little thing.
Well, and I just wanted to add that one of the cool things is that this is actually one of the Zamboni models. It is an E version, and so it's not like a conversion per se. It's actually being sold.
And I'll have to ask around my cousins in Massachusetts and stuff, like maybe all the Zambonis they're selling are now becoming electric. Why not? I mean, you need the charging equipment there. So I suppose the initial purchase is a little higher, but I imagine that the maintenance over time is lower. which is kinda
Totally.
cool.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is the next thing I wanted to share about. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but I just recently learned there's what's called a pole-to-pole electric vehicle expedition happening right now. You may have heard of Chris and Julie Ramsey. They're kind of longtime EV travel enthusiasts, and they previously completed what they call the Mongol Rally from the UK to Siberia in a Nissan Leaf. And so this is now their next expedition they're tackling. So essentially they're traveling from the magnetic North Pole to this in the Arctic to the South Pole in Antarctica. And it's a 17,000-mile journey crossing 14 countries. They just started in March of this year, and they estimate it'll take about 10 months to finish the trip. They're partnering with Nissan, and they're doing it in this Aria, which has some modifications that they've done, such as these, as you can see, these huge beefed up tires with a improved suspension system. They actually had to widen the arch, the wheel arch, to allow for these 39-inch off-road tires. I don't know if you can see on the map, but that kind of shows the first part of their trek there, where they went to the kind of down the western side of the North American continent and then across the US. And they're currently in Detroit, Michigan, and will soon head south to Central America.
Do you think they changed tires when they hit?
I don't think
pavement?
they did actually, which is interesting. I'm not sure why. Maybe they did, but it looks like in that picture there where they're camping, I think that was a more recent picture, and I don't think they changed the tires, but that's a good question. I do know that when they were in the Arctic, they were actually driving over sea ice and other frozen terrain. And so because of this, they had to set their tires to about 3 to 4 PSI, I was reading, which made them, really squishy essentially to spread out the surface area. And that then put less force on the ice, making it safe for them to drive in the Arctic. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting.
And then the windmill?
Yeah, so when they were in the Arctic, they towed this portable little renewable energy unit, which consisted of a wind turbine and solar panels, and this allowed them to charge in the Arctic, and then they'll use it again in Antarctica. So really, truly a renewable energy trip. And then as much as possible, they're trying to sleep either in their car or above it in this little tent. And trying as much as possible to charge at, charge stations that are using renewable energy. And so, yeah, their main goal really is to just show that EVs can handle truly the harshest of environments, both the bitter cold in the poles, which was as low as -30 degrees Celsius, then all the way to the humid jungles in South America, and then other climates that can reach up to 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. So anyway, and I thought another interesting thing was that they mentioned in the Andes, where the air is very thin, it actually would be very difficult for an internal combustion engine to function well there, but not so much for an EV. So one kind of cool advantage of an electric vehicle. And yeah, so they're really hoping to bring awareness to both the climate crisis and the important role of EVs in kind of our next transition here. And if you're interested, you can follow them on Instagram. I believe it's just pole to pole EV. It's pretty cool to actually see them driving over the ice in the Arctic. And I don't know, they share some, their ups and downs for sure, but it's, I don't know, kind of a fun journey to follow.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. They've run into when Alan Soule did his 180 days around the world, there were some really specific and interesting insights around, how helpful everyone was and how easy it was to charge in these different countries. But this is a more extreme kind of environment. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
And supposedly no car ever has done this trek, electric or otherwise, or internal combustion engine. So it's kind of a first time for any vehicle, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
EVs make parking even more annoying. I think I did this on behalf of Zeno. And, Zeno often brings some really great insights for us. And I thought this was a good insight. This is really where people are at right now, is if they're in an urban area, if they're at a large condo location, like what Mike just mentioned in New Jersey, they're probably suffering a little bit thinking about how they're going to handle parking and charging. So this Atlantic article was a little bit off, I thought, but still interesting to me that it, predicts that urban condo dwellers used to having cars in the first place and not using public transit will suffer as they transition to EVs, and that a lot of these condo associations, et cetera, are assuming that they can make level 2 chargers available in some very small portion of their parking spaces, like 10%, of their parking spaces. And then they go on to mention that China has 1.7 million chargers and almost half are level 3s. So there's a lot of level 3 charging in China, but I don't think they quite understood why that is or what's going on there, that people are driving up to level 3 chargers, charging for 10 minutes and going on with their week. So I'm not sure if the prediction of this, perceived pain is actually correct. And I thought, it was a cranky article in the Atlantic, because the Atlantic and the New Yorker are a little bit cranky, but we like them anyway. And I just thought, they were missing a lot of opportunity here, but it wouldn't be as fun and it wouldn't be as whiny. But, to me, public level 3s kind of answer that problem. And also maybe a lot more level 1s right in those parking spaces. And then just a nod to Zeno. I thought also Zeno would suggest more car sharing with more charging services that way.
Talk to any condo owners. I've lived in 2 condo complexes in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Main problem with the one I'm in right now is you can't put 220 into the both condo complexes I lived in had garages where you parked and could close the door. They weren't carports.
Mm-hmm.
And the only problem with mine is I do have to use a level 1 charger, but for the amount of driving I do, I don't care. In other words, the 110 power charger takes forever, of course. But I have my own private charger and the car stays in the garage overnight. So did this Atlantic article talk to any condo owners, or are they making the assumptions that most condo owners only have access to carports?
Well, I think it's an opinion and human interest piece, so it was not a research piece. So I think it's important to note what the opinion and human interest pieces say, because they're kind of more off the cuff type, assumptions. And I think, also, people, they don't understand. And so, it ends up getting repeated a few times over, right? Like, people say, oh, that's, electric cars are never going to work in condo buildings. There's lots of ways that they can work. And I think maybe we need some more stories around that, and like you said, level 1's great. If everyone has level 1, then you're not fighting each other for that level 1.
And also, if you have a parking garage, carport, usually they have assigned spaces, at least in apartment buildings. I haven't really looked at the ones in condo developments, because most condo developments I've experienced have my own personal garage, meaning I have my own personal charger. And I can see that those could have, if a person maybe pay for it extra or something, having something installed in their own carport, and when they leave, they take it with them. I mean, it could be, the car charger came with the car, so it's my personal property. And when I leave this condo, it'll go with the car. So I still don't see too much of a problem. The main problem with parking, and people do this at work, and I've heard complaints, is you generally are used to leaving your car in a parking place all day long. Let's say if it's at work, and if that car place has a charger on it, then you're pigging the charger. So that is a problem.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think they were thinking about very urban locations, multi-level that had basement, garages, etc. Brad, do you have a question?
I was just going to reiterate the urban word in the first bullet point. I mean, I don't know if I highly doubt that a condo complex in Sebastopol or Santa Rosa or Healdsburg or anywhere in Sonoma County would qualify as urban, according to the Atlantic article. I mean, if you don't have to pay for a parking space, I'm not sure if it would qualify as urban.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, Brad. So say you're in New York City and you really want to have a car, you're paying for your space. And if you want an electric car, you just pay for an electric space. And I bet someone's going to provide that to you because you're going to pay a different price for it, I imagine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if anyone is an Atlantic subscriber and wants to write a letter to the editor, you're welcome to. How much oil do EVs save? I thought this might be also kind of related to Zeno's trip to Ho Chi Minh City, because this was taking some Bloomberg NEF data and trying to visualize how much oil is being saved from 2015 to 2025. And 2- and 3-wheel vehicles represented the largest displacement of oil. So, if you imagine a large urban city like Ho Chi Minh City converting from gas mopeds to electric mopeds and electric bikes, and multiplying that times many cities over, you've got the big red section there where you're displacing 675,000 barrels a day already back in 2015, and going up to 1.1 million barrels a day into 2025, which is only 3 years from now. 2 years from now, sorry, we're speeding forward. So I thought this was kind of interesting. And also I keep wondering, when will we displace so much oil that it will feel significant enough in the marketplace? I mean, we all want to displace enough oil over time to actually reduce the acceleration of, carbon in the atmosphere. But along the way, I think something that would be very helpful is to make it impact the oil markets a little bit, so that everyone understands where we're going and the oil markets adjust. So it was said that the 2015 levels up to the 2023 levels were just really not impacting the oil markets, because no one's written big national news articles that the oil market's crashing or whatever. But it feels like to me that we're on the cusp of that, because as you move the dial forward to 2025, it's going from 1% of all oil produced to 2 and 3%. And I just feel like if electric cars are kind of on an acceleration ramp, shouldn't oil displacement be on that same acceleration ramp? So that's that information. Memeing charging agreements. Is this Cecilia?
Yeah, so I came across this in a EV group I'm in, and I couldn't help laugh about it. But if you're familiar with SpongeBob, maybe you've seen the scene. If you're not, I think that if you'll see it, you can understand the sentiment. You got Tesla, Ford, and GM represented by SpongeBob and Patrick just running around outside, arms in the air, really happy. And then you got Volkswagen represented by Squidward, who's just looking out the window, kind of forlorn, like, you left me behind. I thought it said some things.
Yeah, I wonder who's gonna join next. All right, we're on to our presentation, and it's 11:06. I think we did all right. Yay.
Right. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. So thank you for staying around to listen to me talk about electric vehicle charging, the history of. I did like quite a bit of like looking into things. I might have gotten some things wrong. I apologize for that. But if you find something interesting, I encourage you to look it up and get the full story of what's going on there. All right. Okay. Let's see. Can I do the thing? Yes. All right. So let's talk about the just electric vehicle charging. So, before there are electric vehicles, there was no electric vehicle charging. So the very first electric vehicle that was made wasn't in the United States. So this is the part of the not mostly in the U.S. So the first one was created by Robert Anderson in Scotland. It was in the 1830s. It's not in the U.S. It used galvanic cells, and those batteries were not rechargeable. So, if you were back in the day and you wanted to say something about EV, you'd be like, "Oh, they're going to fill up landfills with those batteries," and you would be right if that's how things stayed. But rechargeable batteries were invented. They were first made in 1859, and I am not good with these people's names, so apologies. A lead acid battery was made by Gaston Plant in France, and it was it was rechargeable technically, but it didn't have a lot of capacity. That was improved by Camille Alphonse Farr in 1880 or 1881, and this added their lead plates for the battery, and they added a lead sulfate coating, which increased the amount of chemical reaction that could happen, which means it could store more energy. And so that made rechargeable EVs practical. So with EVs that were around, people started making them. People would charge at home, some people at least. So they would charge via 110 volts, as that was like what was around then, at least for homes. The first chargers were these big devices. They used mercury arc rectifiers, which are, you can see it's a little glass tube in the back there in that picture. Well, I'll talk about a bit more later. They later on they used smaller devices, Tungar battery chargers, and these involved little bulbs, had tungsten filaments, and were filled with argon gas, or maybe they had mercury in them. Some drawbacks to home charging is that electricity is mainly in the city center. So that means that if you didn't live in the middle of the city, it was going to be hard for you to get electricity to charge at home. And so this would limit the availability of EVs outside of cities if you wanted to have like a car that you could charge at home. Has anyone ever driven or visited or seen one of these old cars? Raise your hand.
I haven't driven,
Okay.
but you go to Reno and they show the charger, and like someone commented in the chat, they hadn't seen the chargers. They evidently set up a small charging area in New York, I believe New York, for these things. So it was a dense enough urban area to have the power and to have the customer base.
All right.
We had one of these, or approximately one of these, at a EV meeting. There was somebody in Sebastopol, an Annalee High School teacher, has one, and brought it to a meeting we had on Morris Street, I don't know, 10-ish years ago. John, you remember? I don't know if you were there then, but anyway,
I
yeah.
saw it at the
Yeah.
Apple Blossom Parade. It was like a 1914, but I can't remember if it was a baker or.
Yeah, I think it was a little later model, but it did look like that one in the picture. I think if I'm right, Mike, that the batteries that they made in the early 1900s were of a form that they didn't die over time. So it's like some of the original batteries were still even working in these cars, which is amazing to me.
All right. So I got a little video if you haven't seen a mercury arc rectifier in action. let me just make sure that my oh, okay, I can't do the thing. I thought I could fix the thing to make sure that I was doing. Oh yeah, you can share sound. I think it's too late for me to optimize for video.
Fingers crossed.
This is a 6-phase version, so this wouldn't be quite what they'd use in charging vehicles. But it might be something like you find in a subway.
It's very Back to the Future.
I can't
The
help it.
old technology looks more
I
modern.
was just gonna say it's
Tesla
flux
coils and
capacitor.
things like that.
I'm just thinking about the aesthetic of like these old sci-fi movies and all the glowing lights and things like
Yeah.
that. And it's like, yeah, there's a reason
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. It didn't come out of nowhere. Oh yeah. A lot of glass.
Very stylish with Edison bulbs.
All right, so yeah, so that was cool. This is what the charging connector looked like. I don't think it's vegan, but it's got in the center there's the positive terminal, and then the outside and the ring between the two rings there is a negative. There's a video that's linked here in the slide, so if you want to look at that later, you can check
That's
it out. And
asbestos
Yeah, I was
liner.
gonna say some kind of asbestos or some type of insulation.
maybe
Yeah,
okay.
it's asbestos.
All right, so if you didn't charge at home, if you couldn't charge at home because you need a setup and one of these charging devices, you might charge outside your house. There were electric cabs back in the day, and for some of these fleets, I saw in one case they actually had battery swapping stations, and in one case it was like in an ice rink, which was interesting. Um, Also, shopping centers, you might find charging things there. And then garages, like public garages where you would pay to park your car, not unlike you do today. Um, Chicago, there was actually a map. They had a map of in this EV magazine because they had those too. EVs were popular back then. It was just like, I mean, it was the car. If you don't want your arm breaking by trying to start a gas car. Um, there were 93 garages that had electric vehicle charging, and that was in 1916. So it's fascinating. I was really excited about that. There's also back in that period of time, research into induction charging. Somebody made a patent to charge for rail, but it didn't seem to happen. Yeah, so in this picture, there are those mercury arc rectifiers. And I'm just imagining just like seeing all these things glowing must have been like really, really interesting. Okay, so we have chargers outside the car, but what about if we put the charger inside the car? Now, this is getting in past the early part when after EVs had reached their peak. Um, I don't know when the first in-car charger happened. I was trying to look up for some specific models. I wasn't able to find it, but if anyone knows that information, feel free to shout it out. But there were cars made after the combustion engine became like the go-to car. Um, there were a few made like the Henny Kilowatt, which was a conversion of a Renault Dauphine. It just required an extension cord. City car, commuter car, those two, it was just, use an extension cord rather than having a big, huge machine or even like a smaller machine that you'd have to keep for your car. So you could plug in a wall at someone else's house. It's pretty easy. There's actually pictures like from ad campaigns, people just being like, oh, I'm just going to plug my car into the wall. Non-rechargeable batteries came back. I don't know what this is about. Apparently,
I'm
the lunar roving
laughing.
vehicle was like didn't have an onboard charger, but I guess there's
Where will
also
you
like no electricity on
charge?
the moon, so you know that makes sense. It had silver, zinc, potassium hydroxide batteries. I'm just sharing that there. Wireless inductive charging looks like some more people were looking into it in the 70s. Okay, and then we get to like more recent times, and some of you may have some experience with this. Who's driven an EV1, or who's like touched one? Anyone? Yeah. All right.
Oh, I did want to mention that I went to the service for our old member Ray, and you know, they talked a lot about how he had, you know, created his Ford Fiesta EV, you know, back in the early 90s. So that would have been a little before the EV1.
Apparently, I put my hand up, but I can't put my hand down. So it's not even want to put my hand down. Okay, so the EV1 and some other vehicles, they use what's called Magna Charge. This was a SAE J1773 standard. It came out in 1995. It was inductive charging. It used an external charger because it provided DC power to the car. There are two sizes. When it initially came out, there was a 5.5-inch paddle, and you just like slot it into the car. As I said, the EV1 had a RAV4 EV, the first one, Chevy S10 EV, and the Nissan Alta EV. I wasn't able to find much about the Nissan Alta EV. Anyway, this communicated via RF. Since it was conductive, it wasn't able to have like a wire for direct electrical communication. This was being replaced by a newer version that was smaller, 4.25 inches, and that was to accommodate a car maker who wanted to make smaller cars and be able to fit that in there. I don't know why it needs to be smaller for smaller cars, but that was the request. It's backwards compatible with the larger models that took the larger paddle with U-shaped adapter. But because of some needing to like not use radio frequency communications, they switched to IR, although future models were going to support RF backwards compatibility for a while at least. It supported up to 6.6 kilowatts, and a 50 kilowatt version was demonstrated. I read that the port itself could support up to 80 or 160 kilowatts. I think it was less for the smaller paddle, but I don't think that ever came about. Oh, and it was safe enough to use underwater. There's actually a video of them charging a car and a tank, like a fish tank with goldfish in it, because there is no like a direct electrical connection. You could do that because it's all sealed inside. And I adjust my thing.
Good for boats.
Okay. And I see a hand raised, Lawrence.
Yes, I'm wondering if it provides DC to the car, how does the induction work? I thought induction only worked with AC.
I'm not aware of it only being an AC thing.
Well, because the induction works on radio waves, and radio waves are created electromagnetic waves from alternating current, but not from direct current.
I'm not the electrical engineer. This is my understanding that was how it worked, but I could be wrong.
So is it like plugging in 110 where you have an onboard charger that switches from AC to DC once it comes in?
Right. And I would imagine the inductive would have maybe a high frequency AC signal going across from the paddle to the car. Because the higher the frequency, the smaller the footprint needs to be of your transformer, or in this case, the two sets of coils sending and receiving the power.
I'm not going to stand by this being DC power. I could be wrong. But thank you for chiming in. And
It's possible it's pulsed DC, which is
Mhm,
similar enough to AC that it creates the radio wave.
mhm.
But I wouldn't see why they would bother to do that, except maybe the technology back then made it easier to do pulsed DC than what we have now with switch mode power supplies, which create AC out of DC.
Brad put a nice link to the chat. Okay. So, okay.
Cecilia here. After the meeting was over, I did some further research on magnet charge or J1773. Lawrence was right. It does indeed do high frequency AC induction charging after conversion to DC in the charging unit.
So I'm gonna move on to the J1772. So there's an older standard. It came out in 2001, so it predated the current J1772. It has a rectangular connector from Avcon, and it was created after the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, rejected the induction charging, and it was adopted by CARB for the 2006 model year, and offered up to 6.6 kilowatts, same as the J1773.
So
Okay.
Woody Hastings had a Ford Ranger. Did anyone else have one with one of those rectangular plugs? Woody's not here to give us the thumbs up. We could check with him.
Right, modern charging. So this is stuff that's still around today. So J1772, this is a thing that many of you are going to be familiar with. This came out in 2009 when CARB requested a higher power than 6.6 kilowatts. They suggested a round Yazuki plug for the people working on the standard, which supports up to 19.2 kilowatts. It's 120 or 240 volts. And again, it was made in 2009. ChargePoint built out a large network of these charging stations using funds from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So a little shout out to them. You've seen a lot of ChargePoint chargers around, at least I have. All right, CHAdeMO. This is a Japanese standard. I saw that in some case European and US manufacturers were against it making it into or being used outside of Japan, at least in Europe and the US. I don't know if they actually voted on it, but there was talk about that being a thing that they might vote on. Sonia, you have a question.
Well, I had a comment on CHAdeMO because I just learned that it stands for let's have tea while charging.
It's a cute name. So the version of CHAdeMO that we have in the US, I believe it supports up to 16.5 kilowatts. It does support higher charging, although I don't think that infrastructure made it into the United States. This came out in 2010. It is DC, it's a fast charger. Pretty sure it's just DC and not AC, but check me on that if I'm wrong. In 2014, V2G was added, and it was available on Nissan Leaf, Kia Soul EV, and the Mitsubishi i-MiEV. Tesla also released an adapter that allowed you to charge at a CHAdeMO station. This adapter is expensive and it's not available anymore. All right, CCS1, or Combined Charging System. So type 1 is for North America. There is a type 2 that's available in other parts of the world. This was first published in 2011. And the first operational charger was in 2013 in the United States, at least, by EVgo. And that was here in California. All it does is add 2 pins to the standardized AC connector. And as of now, it supports up to 350 kilowatts, although there's future growth available for that. It's available on most non-Tesla vehicles with fast charging capability. And it's compatible with newer or upgraded Tesla vehicles via an adapter. Okay. And okay, so let's talk about those charging networks that support CCS and also sometimes CHAdeMO. Electrify America was established in 2016. It came about because of a settlement for their emissions defeat scandal. They were ordered to commit to $2 billion over 10 years to develop charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. It's currently the largest CCS compatible fast charging network, and they support up to 250 kilowatts. I started with them. They're not the oldest ones, but they're at the top of the list. EVgo was established in 2010. They have chargers up to 350 kilowatts. ChargePoint was established in 2007 as Qualcomm Technologies. And they took over 9.8 GE charging stations in 2017. And what's interesting about the GE name is that they actually made chargers back in like the original day of EVs. I'm sure that they weren't talking about taking over any of those old stations, but more modern stuff. They have the largest charging network if you count all their level 2 AC charging. And they support up to 350 kilowatts. Blink has a very interesting history. I've been doing some research on them. They've changed names a lot of times. But they were established in 2006 before they went into the EV charging business. And they mostly have AC or level 2 AC charging. And their DC charging is 30 to 350 kilowatts. Okay, Tesla, or NACS as we call it now. So the AC portion, this was available in vehicles in 2012. It uses, what I understand, it uses digital communications for talking to the EVSE. Although EVSE, at least for wall connectors, will fall back to using the J1772 communication protocol, which allows it to work with vehicles that speak J1772. If you tried to plug in using an adapter like a Tesla tap, there might be a delay if it's set to try to communicate with the Tesla first. And the supercharger is the same connector. They go up to 250 kilowatts with the V3 superchargers. It's the largest fast charging network, and most Tesla vehicles include support. And the reason I say that is because, well, first of all, the original Roadsters don't, but early Model S's, you had to actually pay in order to use the supercharging network, and if you didn't pay the amount, I think it was like, what was it, like $2,000, then you didn't have access to the network. In 2022, it was renamed to North American Charging Standard. And at that point, they opened sign for use by others, either with an adapter or with a NACS port. And some people will say that, oh, but they already opened it up. But what they did in 2014 is that they offered all their patents to people as long as they, promised not to sue Tesla for intellectual property infringement. So a lot of companies weren't really into that. So they weren't using this port until this point in time. Okay. So this is about, okay. So I was assuming this was DC, maybe I'm wrong, but J2954 was this induction charging system standard, supports up to 11 kilowatts. Whitetricity was pushing the standard, and it was published in 2020. There are special versions of the 2019 BMW 530e that had support built in. I believe that it's possible to retrofit it into other cars. Okay, megawatt charging system, or NCS. So this is sort of a newer standard for charging larger vehicles, heavy duty style equipment like trucks. So there were a draft for the NBEAA 3.2 version of the connector was adopted in 2021. It's expected to be finalized in 2024. I'm not sure like what levels of finalization there are, but there are points in the timeline for when they've completed certain aspects of the design. Right now, it supports up to 1 megawatt, although up to 4.5 megawatts is possible in the future. I saw in a Department of Energy, I believe, slide that there is some discussion about it possibly being used for race cars to charge them really quickly. Tesla is using the standard in the Tesla Mega Charger, which they have implemented in the Nevada Gigafactory and the Frito-Lay or PepsiCo factory in Modesto. I'm not aware of other places using it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But this is a case where it was actually mentioned. Okay, so I was focused a lot on vehicles, but there's like so many things that actually charge and that need to charge and need support for that. So this standard is called the Electric Vehicle Power Transfer System using Conductive Automated Connection Devices Recommended Practice. It's a long name, but it has a standard J3105, or a designation for a standard. So it allows automatic charging connectors for heavy duty vehicles like buses or buses. I think that's the main thing. So the first recommended practice was issued in 2020. Yeah, it's primarily focused on buses, and it's for opportunity charging when the bus stops or there's a layover. It's good. It's a chance to pick up a little energy to extend its range. There are 2 current levels that are in this practice, recommended practice: 350 kilowatts and 1,200 kilowatts or 1.2 megawatts. And it communicates via Wi-Fi, which I thought was interesting. Sonia, you have a question?
Yeah, as far as trucks and buses go, do any of them like has anyone seen one that like kind of downgrades to also include like a level 3 car charger so that there's more flexibility or something like that?
I think that there are trucks that if they include the mega charger, but they'll also include CCS.
Got it. So they'll have like a
At least for now until that's like the infrastructure is built out. Ellen?
Yeah, I'm just curious, do you know if the Santa Rosa city electric buses use this J3105 or?
I do not know.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if they picked a bus type yet. They got like a bunch of new money, and do you know if they already have a bus now?
Yeah, they do have 5 in operation right now, and they're expecting by the end of the year, I think, to have the other 6 or something. But yeah, I think they have. I guess they've chosen them, unless they're going to change after these 5. But yeah, I even saw a couple drive by downtown Santa Rosa. It's pretty cool. Anyway.
Linda?
Yeah, we've got a little electric shuttle. I mean, it's the size of a city bus, but it's the one for Sebastopol. And I said, what a nice bus. It doesn't stink. And then I looked at the sign on it, it's electric. That's wonderful. And I'll have to take next time one is like near Lucky's when I'm there or something, I'll have to see if it has a port on it. I suspect that this looks like this overhead crane looking thing is pretty elaborate. I suspect for something like Sebastopol bus that we have a charging port like a Tesla or a regular EV, I suspect.
So these extending arms are called pantographs.
Pantographs, like the old writing thing that Thomas Jefferson invented?
And Lawrence.
Yeah, so I just want to say that heavy trucks and buses probably will maintain CCS or something similar with the cable for quite a long time, because they're much cheaper to plug in, say, at the depot. And currently there's a fair few trials with bidirectional charging from buses. using the CCS connector, even if it's not using the SAE standard. But hopefully they'll all move to the SAE standard, so every bus and truck, when they're sitting in the depot, could both be charged efficiently and give power back to the grid to help us get fossil fuels off the grids in the evening.
All right, so there are three connection types in this recommendation. There's the cross rail, which is this first picture where the pantograph comes down, and then there's the bus up where it comes up from the vehicle. And then there's a pen, and I didn't find a really good picture of it, but there are pens that I think stick into the vehicle, I think from the side. And there's blade type. This was offered by Proterra in 2016, but is not included in this recommendation. And also, Proterra has stopped using it, and they've switched to I think either the crossrail or the bus up type. I forgot which one. All right. So last year we talked about electric trains, but we didn't really talk about the charging for them. This is a wayside connector system. It allows for locomotive charging. I don't know if there's any kind of standards around it, but this particular connector is made by the Amphenol Industrial Products Group, and it was used on that WebTech BL locomotive that we got to hear about. And there's a video of this person plugging it in if you want to see how that works. It's a really heavy cable. They got little supporting things, so it's not too heavy to hold up, apparently. All right, so that's it. I have a random collection of links where I've picked up some information. And it's kind of like I put it in as I kind of collected it, so it's not in any particular order, but it sort of quasi represents my journey in discovering all these different things. And that's it. Any final questions?
No, it's great to get the context, because I think maybe Jerry already has enough background on this, but he's serving on the transportation committee right now, and they talk about acquisition of buses, et cetera, and just to have that kind of broader context. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. That was awesome. I learned a lot. Can't believe there was charging way back in the early 1900s. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was astounded when I went to this car museum and they said it's just a car and next to it's the charger. And then they said, well, and then the information on it said there was public charging spaces, like they mentioned, Cecilia mentioned in her thing, that I guess of shopping centers and public garages. So that's pretty cool. I don't know what their range was. Looking at the tires on the vehicles, I'm certain they didn't go over 35 miles per hour, since I could see that they essentially had bicycle tires on them. But they were great for where they were, and people kept predicting that New York was going to be buried in horse manure. So it already was, even the combustion engines were cleaner than that.
Yep.
Yeah, let us remember that in 1900 there were more EVs than there were ICE cars.
Yep. It's actually fascinating, looking through some of these EV magazines. These people they took their cars on picnics. They met up and they had little EV clubs. There was an actual electric vehicle association convention that was going on at that time. I don't know if I don't know if it's the same or associated with the EVA we have today. I mean, it's changed its name, but yeah. Also, one charging network, and I couldn't find any information about this, but there was this thing. It had a logo and everything, but it had a very generic name. It was like electric vehicle charging something, and that was the name of it. So if you look at it on the internet, it's you see everything about charging. But that was back in the mid 1900s, but I couldn't find anything about it. But it seemed to be a thing that was around then.
Well, we actually have reached our open discussion section with time. I don't know if that's happened in a long time. But if anyone has any more comments on the presentation, we can start with that, but we have some time also to bring up new topics if we want. I did see one 1910s car with its original batteries, and they did say that those original batteries would probably give the car like 10 miles. And so I think it was an example of it possibly always gave the car 10 miles. And it's funny that it was kind of like a little rolling living room, and it had a little sconce for some flowers on the side. And I think cars have kind of like circled all the way around to that. You know, they've become rolling living rooms again a little bit. And
the early internal combustion and steam-powered cars also had the little sconces for the flowers. Remember, they're based on, they were called horseless carriages. They were based on, the only carriages we generally have seen in the United States is you see displays of things like, you see the Amish carriages, or you see a display of stagecoaches, but carriages were very elaborate.
Yeah.
You do want to do like one follow-up. From what I saw, like in the early 1900s, I think the cars had less than 200 miles of range. There was one article they were talking about, like, you can drive your car out into the country. You know, you follow the flat roads, the ones that don't give you, or at least the ones that don't take too much charge. You can get out there. I think there's a mention of maybe 125 miles, just getting around outside the city.
Yeah. Leonard. Oh, Lawrence, sorry, Lawrence, I got your name wrong.
Okay,
Lawrence,
yeah,
sorry.
there's an airplane going over. Hopefully you can make me out. So I'm involved with the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, and they have a 1912 electric Detroit motor vehicle. And not too long ago, they replaced the batteries. And when they did that, they determined that there was nothing wrong with the old batteries, except the outer cases leaked. And unfortunately, they didn't hang on to the batteries, but their determination was that those batteries would still be working with significant range today if the people who had done the replacing had picked up on the fact that there was nothing wrong with the plates and all the mechanics. It's just the case that held the electrolyte needed replacing. So they're all kicking themselves that they didn't hang on to those old batteries, because they're quite confident they'd have just as much range as the new ones that they put in, which are slightly different chemistry. And I forget the old chemistry, but apparently they have very little degradation. Maybe not very high power to weight ratio, but just extremely low cycle degradation.
John, you have your hand up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about the EVSEs that I've looked at just for trips up north and stuff. That Ellen mentioned the Sundial Bridge one up in Reading, and we were thinking of checking that out. But when I called, I found out that they had like 4 fast chargers there, and 2 of them were taken out by a car running into the stations. And so I was trying to figure out why they weren't being repaired and why it was such a delay, because people had reported, when you look on PlugShare or ChargePoint. Do you remember, Ellen, were those ChargePoint chargers? I can't remember, but I called both ChargePoint the manufacturer, and then they said, well, it's not up to us when these get repaired. So I just thought it's interesting for everybody to know that if you are looking into what's wrong with charge stations on long trips, it's useful to know that when stations are owned or operated by a municipality like the city of Reading, that the EVSE manufacturer that has a name on it doesn't really have a say about when they get repaired. So I know maybe that's obvious to a lot of people, but I found it interesting that then when I contacted the city of Reading, I found out that there was a whole snafu that they were going through because of budgeting issues, and and having to get those things repaired on their schedule. And evidently the EVSE manufacturer, like ChargePoint, lets the municipality know, hey, there's something wrong, and then it's up to them to get it done. So I just found that interesting, that it's sort of a complicated process for why a lot of these EVSEs are failing in the field and why they're not being fixed. It's just interesting that
I just add a quick one to that. That's a unique business model to ChargePoint, where they sell the systems to City of Reading, Target, wherever they put them. And it's constantly, when you call them, your chargers out, they'll say, well, we'll contact the owner. We don't own them. I'm like, so you don't have a maintenance contract in place. So that's a failure of a system, because that can be out for weeks or months. Whereas Electrify America owns the system, generally maintains it in a timely fashion. EVgo also typically owns their systems and tries to maintain them in a timely fashion, but that's a weak link, the timely repair and maintenance of chargers. And it's a little trouble. I don't know what entity could put some pressure on that, but it's a business model thing, and it's also just like you have a responsibility to maintain these as we go forward. So or we're all going to gravitate towards Tesla chargers or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point, Tor. Should we switch over to David Harris? We'll come back to Tor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've joined late, so I don't know how much you've discussed, but I'll carry on that charge point. There's actually, there were 2 locations just south of Santa Rosa where you could get free charging, and that was the casino, Grayton Casino, which has ChargePoint, and Sonoma Mountain Village. And Sonoma Mountain Village, they're doing some construction, so they took out the one that was on the north parking lot. But the last time I looked at it, it says now that it's for employees only. So that long-standing free level 3 charge point's gone away. And the last couple of times I've been stopped in at the casino to see if I could charge, they've been down. So ChargePoint definitely, well, if you contact them, well, that's up to the casino. And, I remember when that casino chargers, those level 3s originally went in there, I thought, well, they're trying to attract business, but they got a significant grant from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to put them in. So that era of those 2 locations of free level 3 charging locally seems to have come to an end. And the other thing I noted about ChargePoint, my wife and I went last Labor Day. We drove from here in our Chevy Bolt up to the Olympic Peninsula, and we ran into a ChargePoint charger that, after calling, we found out, well, the local airport that owns the ChargePoint charger has limited it. It said on the network that it was a 50 kilowatt charger, but it was being limited to like 20 kilowatts by the owner. And so you get into those things with ChargePoint. So certainly Electrify America and EVgo are different, and as Tor has pointed out. So the other topic I would like to bring up, I don't know whether you've discussed people who've been in the market for buying EVs. I know somebody who had ordered a Bolt, and they said, well, when things come in on order, I don't know what the percentage is, but there are people who've ordered them, and then when they finally arrive at the dealership, there's at least a quarter of them, maybe 40% of them, that the people who originally ordered them say they're not going to take them. So that's how you get a phone call from the dealer who said, oh, we got one that the person who ordered is not taking it, but they're still
That's
adding
exactly how I got mine.
Right, and they're still adding thousands of dollars to the MSRP. I mean, that was like 2 weeks ago. They were adding $3,000 or $4,000 to the MSRP. So does anybody else have observations of whether this supply and demand has gotten back into balance where they're selling them at the manufacturer's retail price rather than adding cash on at the dealership?
When I bought my EV Bolt back in September, mind you, it was a 2022 and the 2023s are just coming out and they were still hard to get. They did not charge me anything over the MSRP.
I think there was one other example of someone who said, call me back when you will, give me the regular MSRP price. And he did get a call back. So I feel like it's mixed right now. Some are upcharging and some are charging straight rate. I don't know if
So
anyone
I've
else.
got comments on a bunch of these things. One is 3 weeks ago or so, I looked around for Chevy Bolts and I could find them at 1,000 above MSRP if I was willing to drive to Watsonville or Monrovia, which I think is near LA. Otherwise, there were significant increases over MSRP. So talking about charging, I've never met a blink charger level or DC fast charger that was working. Every time we've gone to Electrify America chargers, we've had to call in to get them to work. And the people on the phone say, oh, if the screen tells you to plug in and then use the app, do the opposite, or vice versa. And so it's rather confusing when they tell you to do the opposite of what the machine tells you to do. And about 4 years ago, we drove up 101 to the mouth of the Klamath River. And at one point in charting our trip, there was a DC fast charger at a casino. But if that was down, there was nothing within range. No level 2 charges, nothing. So we borrowed a level 2 charger with a NEMA 1450 plug on it and packed it in the trunk because we noticed there was lots of RV parks in the area. And it turns out we didn't use it on the way up because that fast charger was working. But when we got to the RV park where we were tent camping, the owner said, oh, you want to use one of our empty spots every night and charge? That'll save you the trip to town to charge for all your day trips. So we did just that and had a great time. But anyways, I throw that out there. Packing a small level 2 charger with a NEMA 1450 plug is not a bad idea because it gives you access to RV parks that have the modern outlets for the big RVs. That's a 240 volt, 50 amp plug. Of course, our charger would only put out 32 amps because that's what the car takes. But it was nice to have that extra security with us. And like I say, it came in handy at the end.
Yeah. I think Tor did a good job earlier talking about the complexity of the competing interests. And it does feel like some of those problems are solvable. Like you brought up maintenance contracts and things. And but if someone's got a different interest in the use of their EV charger over time. Like for instance, I think there's this trend that there's plenty of fast chargers out on the highways. Why should my business continue to offer this charger at its location to just anyone? And, anytime we get more and more restrictions, maybe the information's incorrect in a network, et cetera. It's all friction. It's all kind of like a bad charging experiences, I guess, Lawrence, you were talking about.
I'd also like to point out that like Electrify America, it was a government mandated response to Dieselgate. And maybe VW really doesn't want us to have electric cars, so they do everything they can to make the Electrify America experience really nasty so that people are discouraged for as long as possible from electric cars.
Yeah. Can we have Brad speak for a minute and then give Tor the rest of the time to talk about Cecilia about climate conversations, carbon conversations. I didn't say it right in the chat. Brad, you had a comment?
Sure, yeah, I can make this quick. I mean, there's a bunch of little updates that I could give on my used vehicle dealership project. I have still not been able to find a used EV dealer in the North Bay. I did find Greenlight Auto Wholesale and talk to them about, the whole idea of consigning or a consignment type sale of two private parties with their own EV already identified, actually completing the transaction at the dealership in order to qualify for the federal 30% up to $4,000 tax credit for used clean vehicles. They brought up the issue of liability insurance, which I've now been able to incorporate that into my pitch for local used vehicle dealers who are not specializing in EVs. I did find that Bay Area Air Quality Management District link that I threw in the chat. Grid Alternatives is running the program. They didn't seem super enthusiastic about reaching out to other used vehicle dealers that were not already signed up. Maybe they've already done extensive marketing. Anyways, it's mostly been, plenty of walls to bang my head against. But anyways, that's what I'm trying to do.
Very good. I'll turn it over to Tor and Cecilia. Did you want to do a little recap on our Wednesday night?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so I put a link in the chat to the recording of the Sebastopol Carbon Conversation Drive Electric event this past Wednesday. Just to recap, we had about 10, 12 vehicles in the parking lot that people got to chat with the owners, etc. A couple things that were shared in the presentation that worthy of a potential, further look in one of these future meetings. Brant Arthur from Sonoma Clean Power shared about their incentive program that they're funding a bunch of new chargers, both level 2 and DC fast chargers. And I want to say he had like 52 plus chargers, in the queue for Sonoma County. And he said also, he says, if you have any ideas, I want to hear it. So I think that's put a pin in that to can we shape those chargers in some way that's better than existing sort of status quo. So that's a thought. The other one, let's see. And then my daughter shared about her experience with driving a used 2013 Tesla, camping, charging at RV campsites, etc. So that's in the recording too. That was kind of fun. And then another element we tried to touch upon was how the incentives for buying a used electric vehicle. And I shared an example of an 80-year-old friend who she hasn't quite given up her 1985 truck, but I helped her apply for a $4,000 rebate from PG&E towards the cost of a Nissan Leaf. So she has a new to her used Nissan Leaf. I just going through all that, it's still it's confusing. And there's a lot of these income qualification requirements, etc. that, is it built in is it new, is it old, is it from a dealer or a private party? I would just say something to consider for a future meeting also is whether this group develops some sort of an EV concierge type of service. I know Actera down in Palo Alto has done that before. They've evolved to, and I know you guys have a few things on the website that help people, but it is, I even helped her scan documents. There's some these little barriers of getting an application that is tedious and, can get bumped at anyway, just something to think about. There's a lot of money out there. One thing that was shared also was the tax credit. They have been described as non-refundable. In other words, you have to take the full tax credit in the year you purchase the vehicle. And it seemed a little unfair for equity kind of issues that you can't fully take advantage of the full value of that tax credit if you're lower income. And Brant shared that next year that's going to change. So I need to confirm that, because that's interesting. If you don't use the full credit, you can carry it over. So that was a tidbit of interest. But that, and then all these tips for road trips, you know, the RVs, if a charger's out, that'd be fun to sort of consolidate that a little better. So it's like road trip tips given the current for non-Teslas specifically. You know, I have some more to share, and folks have shared here now. Just a potential topic is revisiting the road trip category, you know, strategies. And then I think, you know, it was fun to share with people, where people really enjoyed it. We had a Ford Lightning out there that the Laguna Foundation had just gotten and was charging up all their, you know, chop saws and all kinds of things. So it was good. It was sort of like, you know, to do that again. I was thinking all night long. I couldn't sleep after that thing because there was all these ideas that were generated, and I was like, oh, you know. Oh, I will say also the other topic. We talked about chargers, and I did not share at the carbon conversation, but I was helping the high school in Sebastopol, Annalee, apply for to put in 6 level 2 chargers. It was a PG&E program, and they got bumped to a wait list. But in the process, we talked about making those chargers accessible to the community for folks, particularly for folks that don't have off-street charging at home, and then also how to share them. You know, if you have, can you reserve them or things like that. So those are, not to get into it right now, but just that's a topic of being able to share level 2 chargers and you know, schedule them, or because I know if I was going to count on a charge, I would instead go to a fast charger. But if you could reserve something, that'd be helpful. There's also a program called EV Match, which homeowners with chargers can, you know, let others, you know, reserve a charging time. So not to get into the details of that, but that's something that probably is a topic to explore further. So any presentation that's done in the community always generates more conversation, just like these meetings. And I think that was the gist of the carbon conversation we had on Wednesday. So anyway, I think that's it, unless everybody has any questions.
Did you want to add anything, Cecilia?
That was a lot more than I remembered. So good, good explaining tour.
Yeah, it was good to speak with, like, the kinds of people that you attracted toward were people who are looking to purchase in the future and had very kind of simple and straightforward early stage questions, it seemed. And it's always great.
Yeah, it was a mix. I mean, there was some, what we call the choir, you know, a lot of e-gushing, and but there was a lot of newbies, and you know, you try to advertise. It got advertised to a lot of different networks, so I think that attracted a variety of people.
I just remembered a thing. I actually did have a few people who'd heard my presentation on my road tripping that I gave in, was that 2019, where that was helpful for them, and they actually like went on to get an EV. So yay.
Hey.
Helps to talk to people about your experiences.
Yeah. Cool.
I will add, I had the intention of going down the row of cars and interviewing the car owners briefly on camera. I did one. So and then I got distracted with talking to people. So that little interview is the intro to the video I just posted. And it was just like, what are you driving, and what do you like most about your car? You could do more with that. I think that idea of chatting with people, because I think people respond to people, not just like, oh, the dealer who has never driven in the EV. So, you know, it's worthwhile to share stories.
Yep. Great. Well, Brad, did you have
Let me throw in a quick share that those with CCS plugs in Northern California, Caltrans last September when we took trip had 2 free chargers on 5. One is at Maxwell's in the rest stop, and the others were just before the Oregon border. That had been upgraded to charge point equipment. And then in making trips to Sacramento, I've discovered and seen it twice that on the campus there is an Electrify America next to the close to the Welcome Center by a parking garage. That it's Electrify America, but you call them up and oh, that charger doesn't exist. But in fact, there is a no charge Electrify America charger on the UC Davis campus that we have used twice now.
not part of the network, maybe?
Right. It belongs to the university and not part of Electrify America's network, but it's there, and you get out your card and try the app and everything, but you plug it into your car and it starts charging.
Nice. Brad, you had your hand raised?
Oh, yeah, I threw a few more things in the chat. I mean, I put the link for the state Senate divestment, CalSTRS fuel divestment bill in the chat before, but I had to keep logging in so many times that I've lost access to it. Maybe you guys still. But that section that I put also, I was reminded by what Tor was saying, because I was told that Annalee does not have any electric vehicle chargers on campus currently. When I went to some event at the JC for, it was kind of a student climate event, and it was interesting because the students said that there are lots. Well, I don't know what lots means, so I don't have a solid number, but there were plenty of both students and teachers that have electric vehicles. They just can't charge them on campus, which I thought was kind of weird and counterintuitive. I don't know if Sonoma Clean Power knows about that, because I know that Brandt and a lot of the people there had talked about doing electric vehicle charger installations at nonprofit organizations. So both, people like customers or whatever of the organization clients and the staff could both use the charger at the workplace. I don't know how much they've gotten into schools. It has been interesting. I've followed the politics on the various teachers unions a little bit as it relates to fossil fuel divestment, and there's a wide variety of opinions, both in terms of individual members of the unions as well as the unions themselves. So it's definitely not unified or coherent, I guess.
Absolutely.
There's more to say about all that, but I would, it could be a topic for a future thing.
So I'm not sharing my screen because I think it's pretty simple to say that in July, we'll work on, a possible venue for the meeting, or just meet online. And I have offered to do a presentation on installing a heat pump water heater. And if anyone has one or has some detail on it and wants to collaborate with me for July, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll talk about the one I have. I know Stephen Franklin Pierce has one too, and I could maybe get him to talk because he did a 110-volt one. So it's a little different.
I would like to point out a quick slide here. Whoops. That there are some new links here. There was a meeting that was recorded by someone else, the 2016 NBEAA meeting. Actually, Alan talks about his planned trip, driving around the world in his car. And also, Transport Evolved did a good video about mining. We talked a little bit about the environmental impacts of battery manufacturing. So that's a good video that talks a little bit about what's involved and what the impacts can be.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
I think that's it.